Well, welcome to Chapter 14. As we get near the end of the class here, you can see we're definitely getting towards those things that you're kind of needing now later in life. Planning for retirement is the chapter this week. So the goals we'll talk about are right here. Just talk about retirement planning, the needs for retirement planning, estimating what income you'll need, what your sources of retirement funds will be. How will this affect me? Clearly, this should affect everybody who wants to retire at some point in time, and it's just a way to consider and think about what you will need as you approach retirement age. I'll let everybody take a look at this on their own. And so it says here, retirement planning, start now. What you have is the power of time. The younger you start doing this, the more power of time that you have to make this happen and have the retirement that you would like. So that's why it says start now in big bold letters like that. So what you have to consider is, what do I want my standard of living to be when I retire? What income level will give you that standard? If you're thinking of moving, what will it cost you to move if you want to go to a warmer climate or whatever that is? Determine the amount you'll need to accumulate in retirement, and then begin a plan to build up that nest egg to fund your retirement. Pitfall: starting too late. The earlier the better, because you have the power of time and the power of compounding working for you. Putting away too little, spending now as opposed to saving now, investing too conservatively, not taking on maybe a little bit more risk, which would definitely build up your portfolio potentially, and then compounding rewards the investor who starts early. So again, the earlier you start, the better off you are, and that's what this table shows you, and this is right from your book. The longer time you have and the higher the rate of return you have means the greater the retirement income that you will have. So putting money, this is $2,000 a year. Okay, that's what this is, $2,000 a year at age 25, so 40 years. You can see what that turns into based on 4, 6, 8, or 10%. Putting away $5,000 a year, you can see what that turns into based on the different ages. So you can see down here on the right, that's the magic number, right? $2.2 million. If you set aside $5,000 a year and earn 10%, that's what you would get. Now, 10% might be a little bit lofty of a goal, but I do want you to see how big of a difference over 40 years 2 percentage points makes. It's almost $1 million. Real close to $1 million between the 2 years. So that just kind of tells you the more time and the higher the rate of return, the more money that you will end up with. So just to determine your future retirement needs, be thinking, what does it cost me to live right now? And a good rule of thumb is to consider that 80% of that would be your future income needed. Okay, clearly when you're younger, you have a family, your expenses will be different than when you're retired. Most likely a home would be paid off, some things like that. So estimate retirement income. Also then take into consideration what you will receive from your various sources of savings. So that would include retirement income, 401k or pension, Social Security benefits, investments that you've set aside outside of a 401k. What are those sources? How big are they? And how much can you draw off of them to supplement your retirement income? And so there's a worksheet, there's an Excel worksheet too. I've got that open, provided by the author of the chapter. Worksheet 14.1, you'll be doing a version of this worksheet when you do Cengage for the week, for the chapter. There's 3 problems in Cengage, and one of them deals with this worksheet. So you want to go and take a look at that so that you're aware of that. But essentially the same thing, it's a little bit smaller version of it, is on the next 2 screens here. So it's just literally just filling in the blanks. Talking about how many years to retirement, your level of expenses, what you think your expenses will be when you retire, clearly less than what they are today typically, what you will need then to live when you retire, what are the sources of your retirement income when you retire, and then essentially going from that, computing inflation. Clearly Inflation is something to consider. It's been right around 2% for about the last dozen years or so, but who knows if that won't go up, 30 years from now. We don't know. So they used 5% in this example, and that just kind of shows you what the shortfall may be. And then of course you need to fund that shortfall to go through and figure out how much you need to save and set aside to meet that shortfall within 30 years, assuming a certain rate of return, and so on. So determine your annual savings. Basically just figure out how much you'll need to set aside for your retirement so that you can draw from that. Determine the systematic saving needed, basically how much you need to put away at regular intervals throughout your working career. And they show you Appendix B. The reason they're showing you that is because this worksheet uses some present value factors here. You can see here we've got a factor here and here because we're going 30 years at 5% with this factor and 30 years at 6% for this factor, to kind of give you some information. It tells you right here Appendix B, and over here it says use Appendix A. So you'll be drawing from those to fill in that worksheet. That's just using your time value of money numbers that we talked about from a previous chapter in the class. So in basically the example we've been looking at, it says here we had computed that we need additional retirement income of $334,950, and so then what we say is we can use a factor 6% 30 years using Appendix B, and then that means we just set aside $4,237 per year. So that just assumes if we set aside that amount per year and we earn 6% on that number, it will grow to be $334,950 in 30 years. So sources of retirement income, an employer pension. So most employers have pensions or 401ks. They're really the same thing, just how they're funded is differently, but they essentially provide the same benefit, which is income in your retirement years. Social Security benefits, income from any investments that you have been accumulating, plus then your employment, potentially. Now obviously if you retire, that means you're not working. However, some people retire from one job and then do another job, so actually still drawing some retirement even though it's still working. You can definitely work part-time when you're retired, and still have some earnings, and not, there's limits about how much you can work and affecting what you draw in Social Security, so you got to be careful about that. But there's lots of rules around that. This just kind of tells you on average from the last several years, distribution of source of income for married couples, non-married people who are age 65 and over between 1962 and